Okay. All right. So here we are. This is the Flight Podcast, man. It's Sunday. I'm feeling good. How you feeling?
I'm feeling awesome.
Man, it's been a crazy week for me. Crazy month actually. It's been a minute. But there's a lot of things that's happening in my. Like, how many separate lives do you live? I was about to say in my separate life, but it's not just one separate life.
You know, I wear multiple hats, so I live a lot of different lives. So, like, I'm an author, I write books, I'm a mentor and do life coaching classes, so I do that. I'm also a wife, so I do that. I have an actual 9 to 5, so I do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, just like the down-to-earth vibe with my friends, that's a whole nother life. So, you know, there's a lot of little lives that I have.
Yeah, that's interesting because I started thinking, I was like, man, a lot of people don't know this side of me.
Right.
And I don't know whether that's a good thing or not.
I mean, I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I think it just simply is.
Yeah.
I think that's. I'm gonna try not to get into a topic by saying that,
Hey.
but no, a whole nother topic.
Oh, a whole other
but
topic.
yeah,
Okay.
but I think that we try to define things so much, whether something is good or bad. It doesn't necessarily have to be good or bad. It just simply is.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was getting into, and that could be a whole episode on, on the side.
Yeah. It's funny because our topic today is, breaking the, I guess what are we going to call
Cycle.
it? Breaking the cycle.
Breaking the cycle, absolutely.
And there's plenty of cycles to break, but one in particular, I know it still today harms or, affects based on how you look at it.
Right.
Our people regarding, early adulthood and transitioning from childhood to adulthood. And it's basically the thing where as soon as you turn 18 or as soon as you graduate high school in Black culture, not all Black culture, but predominantly Black culture, you got to get a job or you got to get out the house.
Yeah.
Or you got to go to college. And, that's harmful because if there's no plan, that can start a whole branch of problems.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, the harmful part, because I don't think a lot of people look at that aspect. So I hear a lot of parents saying things like, oh, well, he lazy or she lazy. Maybe they don't have a plan. Maybe there's no confidence behind who they want to be because they have no plan. And so now you're, again, putting a label, putting a title, which is something that I don't necessarily like, but that tends to happen. What you got to understand is when you do that, when you label your child, when you put a title, oh, you're lazy, you're this, you're planting seeds in that child.
Yeah.
And understand that those seeds will sprout eventually.
Oh, yeah.
So what I've come to learn is even if you have a survivalist mentality, you have to look at this from the grand scheme of things. Why do you have this feeling that your child needs to help or needs to provide? That comes from something, that comes from somewhere. So maybe that's where we start. Maybe that's where we start this conversation.
So, I mean, could it be like, I'm sure. So here's my idea. Why is it all of a sudden, you take care of this kid for 18 years and now all of a sudden you just can't do it anymore financially?
I think so here is my opinion. And again, I say my opinion very heavily because I don't want people to take my opinion as Bible. My opinion is at the time that they had the children, they were not prepared. Maybe this should be about preparation.
Yeah.
And so when you don't prepare for something, it catches you off guard and you deal with it until you don't have to. Now, from a systematic standpoint, you're told that when you turn 18, you are legal. Yeah. Now I don't have to do this. So I think a lot of that comes from lack of preparation. So for me, I don't have children. I can prepare for children. Yeah. So when I have them, I don't have to kick them out at 18. I'm prepared to lead them. I'm prepared to guide them.
Yeah.
But everybody doesn't have that, what's the word I'm looking for? Everybody doesn't have that option. Some people have kids and it just happens. You're not planning to have kids, You end up pregnant or you end up getting someone pregnant and now you have to readjust the scope of your life. It's not that you don't know what to do or how to do it, you're not prepared.
Right.
You might have been in the middle of trying to figure out your own stuff. Maybe you got put out at 18. You know what I mean? And now you're 22 and you have a kid, and by the time they turn 18, you're doing the same thing that happened to you. And I think a lot of that also goes into identity.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know who you are and where you're trying to go, when things like an unplanned pregnancy comes into place, you feel like that has disrupted the course of your life. That has changed the trajectory of where you were going or what you were trying to do. Yeah. And so, yes, children are a blessing, but sometimes for some people, they can be a burden too. Because now they're putting their lives on hold. And now it's all about that kid.
Absolutely.
And it's like, as soon as that kid turns 18, now I can get back to me. And it's like, well, if I got to still take care of you, I can't get back to me.
Yeah.
So now you got to get a job because you need to help so that I can get back to me.
That's interesting. Because I hear about some instances where, even with the girl I'm dating now, she told me like in her past, the father of the child would be jealous of the kid. And I mean, I started to think about like how emotionally when you have a child, if you're not prepared, some people were only children, so they didn't know, I guess, how to share their time or how to, put themselves last.
Right.
And so those emotions will come up. Oh, now this kid is priority number one. Now my wife isn't my wife anymore. She's just a mom now.
Right.
And, all that, and like you said, from a state of being prepared, that's tough. And I think a lot of that, because I was thinking a lot of these kids, speaking on the cuff of them being 18 and having to make a decision now, whenever they weren't raised to know how to make decisions and how decisions impact their life from start to finish. Talking about exposure to different parts of life, different walks of life. How many kids, especially Black kids, are able to travel? Right. How many kids have actually been out of their state? I mean, there are a few lucky people. My friend Shannon, her daughter's been to Japan and all these other places. Not a lot of kids can say that.
Everybody doesn't have that luxury. I will say this. My mom loved to travel. And when I was young, we would go on road trips, and I thought that was so fun and so fascinating. But I also understood that we could only do what we could afford. And so my mom was a single parent, and she did what she could. Thankfully, she wasn't the type of parent to force us out. Like, me and my brother leaving at 18 was our own decision. I know for a fact if we would have stayed at home, my mama would have been okay with the idea. Now, granted, you got to work, because I get it from a survivalistic standpoint. My mother she takes care of herself.
Yeah.
When we turn 18, she's looking at it like, well, you grown, you can take care of yourself. You can live here, but you need a job to pay for the things that you want, because that is no longer my responsibility. Right. And I get that. But at the same time, if your children are not prepared to take on the world, how can you fault them? Now, not to say that you failed as a parent, because maybe you were not taught. And so this goes to the whole cycle that we're talking about. Who's going to break the cycle?
Right.
So I'm grateful for my mom, because she planted the seed in me and my brother. And so we're out here breaking cycles. But it's like, everybody's family is not like that. Some people, parents, feel like, well, you got to do this, or you got to get out, or you got to. And it's like, man, as bad as that sounds, I also understand it. Not that I'm saying that I agree with it, but I understand it. It comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
This survivalistic mentality comes from somewhere. It's deeply rooted in a systematic idea that it has to be like this. And until you break the system, it continues to be like this.
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially with those kids having to make the decision, and like I said, like, decisions, to be able to make effective decisions, anybody can make a decision.
Right.
But in order to make an effective decision, you were saying that, these are seeds being planted. Well, I'm glad you said that, because seeds take root. They really come from a foundation.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have a foundation on anything that you're trying to do, you're going to be unprepared. You're going to be unstable. And unstable decisions, especially when it's time for financial decisions, can cause catastrophic, event. Prime example, oh, you gotta either get a job or you gotta go to college.
Right.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna opt to go to college. And so you go to college and you don't even know what you're gonna do, but you have to make a decision right now.
Yep.
What are you gonna do? So you make one decision and then you get a third of the way through. You're like, I don't really like this. Okay, I'm gonna need to make another decision, and then another decision, and another. Now you done racked up $100,000 worth of debt, and you still haven't made a decision.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that comes from the lack of exposure.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't know the possibilities, how can you make a different choice? So if you're given a bucket, and in this bucket it's only 5 options, and you don't know that there's 1,000 options around the bucket, outside of the bucket, you're going to feel like you have to choose something in this bucket, even if it does not bring you joy. I think a lot of this comes from the lack of knowledge. A lot of parents don't know that there's other options because they were not giving those options. And so they don't teach you that there's more options, right? And so now we got a cycle of, okay, well at 18, you just got to figure it out. When in reality, it should have been happening throughout this child's, growing up. It should have been taking place. But if you don't know that, then how can you be at fault?
Yeah.
I don't think that anybody is at fault necessarily. I think that the system is at fault because the system is what doesn't allow you to be exposed to all of these things. Like when I went to college, I was exposed to career fields I never knew existed. I was exposed to things that make tons of money that I never even knew was a thing. Just like I was telling you earlier, air traffic control, they make amazing money. But had I not watched a TV show a couple of years ago where they showed this job, I wouldn't even known that was a thing. And then I look it up and I see the money and I'm like, man, they make some serious cash, but nobody's talking about this as a career. Yeah. Nobody's talking about that. You hear pilot, you hear flight attendants.
That's it.
But what about air traffic control? There's a lot of background jobs that go on that make lots of money, and that might be something that's really interesting to you.
Yeah.
But if you don't know it's a possibility, how can you choose it?
Right. And even for the creative people, like only thing I could think of when you were saying like there's 5 jobs in this bucket. Yeah. The only thing I could think of was the really creative kids who were just looking at this and it's like, well, wait, who made the bucket?
Right.
Like I don't see bucket maker in here. Like, but Bingo. A lot of that. I mean, we got into this before about the education system. The system stunts a lot of creativity. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna not even talk about that because I've been went off the rails. But anyway, but no, seriously though, I think that the more we expose people to the possibilities, the better they can prepare to become whoever they want to be in life. Yeah. I think a lot of people are raised by people who don't even know who they are. And so you have a person who was not ready or prepared to have a child in the middle of trying to find themselves, having a kid, now having to finding themselves on hold to now care for this child, all the while loving their child, but in the back of their mind feeling like, man, if I didn't have this kid, I would probably be, or if I didn't have to deal with this, I would probably be. And so as soon as that kid turns 18, you're like.
Right. And even on the other side of that, some parents even choose to live their second life through their kid.
That too. And that's a big one because we see that in a lot of different ways, from sports to music to just regular life. You have parents who didn't get to live out their dreams, and so they push you to live out a dream that's not your own.
Yeah.
And so you might be miserably, playing basketball whole time. You hate it, but you don't want to let your mama down or you don't want to let your daddy down, so you're just doing it. I'm guilty of that with the whole doctor thing. And I'm writing a book now, so I'm not going to get too much into it because this will be a part of my book. But I didn't want to be a doctor. That was never my plan, my goal. That's what everybody else saw me being. And so I just adapted that mindset, all the while knowing deep down inside, I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I felt like, in a lot of ways, I felt like I had to because that's where the money was. Mm-hmm. But if I would have known that there was so many possibilities, that would have been one of those things that's in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
versus me trying to convince myself that I wanted to be a doctor, and I hate blood.
Yeah.
So I think that's
I
really,
think blood makes me faint, and then you're in the operating
I'm
room and you
easily
just
that
pass
person.
out.
Like, you start bleeding too much, I might pass out.
I remember, like we talked about this earlier, like career days. So I grew up in foster care, right? And so I'm not gonna speak for all foster parents, but the ones that I had experiences with, I'm not gonna say they didn't care, but you have so many kids, and you have your own kids,
Right.
So when it comes to like fully investing in a child that's not yours, I could see it being tough. But like career day, we would always, have people bring their own parents into the school to tell you what they do. Which, I guess firefighters and cops and everybody does the same old.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, how cool would it be to, like, you're talking about those background jobs, for people who could really come in and kind of mix it up a little bit.
Right.
Because, I don't know how many kids will grow up and say, I want to be an accountant. But there are kids that love numbers.
Right.
And you could do a lot with numbers. What's that? Hidden Figures?
Man.
You could do so much with numbers.
Yes.
And numbers can take you very, very, very far in life. And if you know, like, equations, what was that? A guy we worked with who was a master of Excel. If you know how to work Microsoft Excel or Microsoft products in general,
you can do a lot of things.
You can name your price.
You can make a lot of money, and that's another thing. So, skills, they don't provide you in school. Like, they'll teach you the basics. Like, you're gonna learn a little bit of Excel. You're gonna learn a little bit of PowerPoint. That depends on
what school you go to.
Right, true. You'll learn a little bit of Microsoft Word, but if you really deep dive into these different programs, you'll realize that you can make a ton of money just simply knowing how to do what you would consider basic things, but to somebody who does not deal in Excel or doesn't deal in PowerPoint, it's like foreign. So they are willing to pay top dollar. And technically, Excel is like, it's a lot of coding that goes into that. Technically. So if you know coding, you can do a lot of things. Like, in my job now, like, I didn't know Excel as much as I do now. And so I like to play around all the time on Excel, because I know all of these great possibilities that can go on. Like, yeah, I knew you could do formulas and all of that, but there's so much more you can do.
So much more, yeah.
And once you tap into that, you're like, man, they're looking for somebody who's proficient in Excel. That's nothing.
Right.
So, yeah, the name your price thing for that is absolutely true.
And this is stuff you could just do on your own. Ain't no college. Well, you could go to college for it, I'm sure, but
yeah,
this is stuff you could just learn on your own.
You can literally go to YouTube and watch Excel videos. And, that's what I did. You gave me some good books. I got some books at home that I be reading that has information on Excel. And, when I say mind-blowing, the possibilities in Excel, crazy.
Yeah.
But you don't know until you know. Right.
And then since we're talking about breaking the cycle, that's a lot of this. I'm guessing all of it, starts with the parents.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to speak from this in a way because I don't have kids, but I remember what it was like being a kid,
right,
and not being asked these questions in retrospect. Because if someone were to really ask me, what are you interested in? And I say, I don't know, like I did, I don't know. Well, that's your opportunity to help this kid. Okay, he likes to play video games. Then take him down the street to ID Software, where they actually creating games.
And that's another thing. So, like, there's people that be like, oh, my son or my daughter, all they do is play the game, blah, blah. They can literally have a career in this. They could literally be gamer creators, and they could be the people that test the gaming. That is a legitimate job, and it is very lucrative.
Yeah.
But if you don't know that, you think that your child is just idle-mindedly, spaced out playing a game, not realizing that that's $100,000 industry job. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They can make bukus of money doing that.
Even just the ideas they have. We all know if your kid, I could hit home with this for every parent. If your kid is yelling at their game, screaming at it because something happened, it's because they already thought of an idea. That's an idea. Man, this game sucks because this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. I guarantee if that kid had an opportunity to fix those problems, They would.
You just made me think of something. So I was reading a status like yesterday, and people were talking about Madden. And I know nowadays Madden is not like a big deal no more. Right. Everybody was saying the same thing. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I haven't played Madden since like middle school. That's when I was like really, really big on it.
That was peak Madden right there.
Right. Now, I haven't played since then. And so I've watched it grow. I've watched people talk about it. And over the years, the comments or the reviews would just go down and down and down. One of the things that I read on this status was that John Madden is now a playable character, right? That was everybody's reaction. Everybody in the comments literally said the same thing. They all said, "Are you kidding me? All we wanted was John Madden to be an announcer.
Right.
That's it. We didn't want him to be a character." When I say every comment I was scrolling on said the same thing, and it's like, you don't even listen to what the people want.
EA is horrible at that.
That's the crazy part. And so if you put people in position who know what the people want because they are the gamers, they're going to make your game successful.
Absolutely.
If you allow them to, though. That's the thing.
That's so horrible.
So I would not be surprised if Madden 25 had John Madden announcing games. But by then, will people care?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's funny, but in this specific topic, it's hard because Madden has the football video game market cornered. That's it. That's the only football game we get is Madden.
I know.
So we just have to put up with it, and that's why people are so angry and so annoyed because there's nothing else. But yeah, and I'm thinking about this. You know, if a kid had an opportunity to fix something that they are really passionate about, if there's anything that you're really passionate about, whenever it's time to dig in and troubleshoot and research, you're going to put 110% forward.
Absolutely.
Versus you going into something that you didn't even really want to do. Now when times get hard, you're ready to give up because there's no buy-in. You don't have any buy-in. And buy-in comes from deeper than the heart. Probably comes from the soul. If this is something you feel like you were born to do, you can't give up on it. It's impossible.
Man, you said something right there. If this feels like something that you were born to do. So those of you that don't know, I was born to write. And no matter how I tried to move away from that, I always found myself in some situation where I had to write. And I realized that that's just something that I'm just naturally good at. And so just like you said, you don't give up. My first book, The Focus to Wake Up, on Amazon, I'm going to plug that. That was an idea that I had from childhood, right? Talking about my experiences as a Black person and how I have observed the world. But it was an idea that I was afraid to put out. But because it's such a part of me and it's something that I'm really passionate about, it didn't matter because I still did it. Yeah. Like I put it to the side a bunch of times. I mean, a bunch of times until I got for real about it because it was something I was just not willing to give up on. And so after pouring my heart and soul into it, I was very pleased with the outcome. And now I have this asset that can make me money for the rest of my life. Focus to Wake Up will always be available.
Right.
Even beyond me, when I have children, it will be a legacy.
Right.
And so that let me know, A, you can write books. B, you really are an author. Yeah, your last name's Arthur, but you really are an author. You really do this. And then C, you can keep doing this. You don't have to stop. And so I think, again, showing the possibilities, exposing to the possibilities. And I thank God for my mama because she was a reader. And she was always reading books. She used to read Danielle Steele books all the time. Like that was her thing. And I would watch her order these books and be excited to read it. And I'm like, man, one day I'm going to write books that you're going to be excited to read. And I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again on record. My mom was the first person to read my book all the way through and provide me with a full review without me even asking anything. Yeah. She let me know she got the book. And like literally a day later, she was like, I'm done. I read it. Here's what I think. And I'm appreciative because A, it lets me know that you are proud of me because you instantly bought it. You instantly read it. I didn't have to beg you. I didn't have to do none of that. And then you provided feedback, which I did not ask for. But I appreciate it because it's good to know what your content does for others. And so I thank her for exposing me to just the concept of books and writing books and and encouraging me to keep writing, because that was something she always did. She bought me notebooks, blank notebooks all the time. I would get those as gifts. And as a kid, like seeing a notebook, they probably be like, notebook. But me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. Right. My best friend bought me this notebook like 2 years ago. And I just write in it. And it thrills me because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And it's like, you're not buying me gifts that I don't care. You see me.
Right.
It lets me know that you see me and you see what I love to do. And so you're pouring into the things that make me me.
Absolutely.
And I think, again, a lot of that comes from parents paying attention to their kids, parents understanding where their kids are trying to go and watering those seeds.
Right.
But every child doesn't get that luxury. So now is the question of, how do we break the cycles or change the cycle to where people are more open and comfortable with allowing their children to simply be who they are, and explore the possibilities.
What makes your kid excited? Like, what makes your kid interact? Like, especially with a writer, it's just something about a blank sheet of paper.
Man,
like
it's a canvas.
Man, and it, like, as soon as you see that blank sheet of paper, your mind just starts racing.
Fast.
Like thoughts on top of thoughts on top of ideas. And that's how it should be with everything.
Yeah.
If your kid likes to, put stuff together or take stuff apart, that was me. I love to take stuff apart. Yeah.
Definitely my brother.
Introduce them to some people. Like, just try to open your mind too, because we talked about that whole, the parent pushing ideas onto the kid. That's dangerous. I really feel like that's dangerous.
It is. Yeah. But you know what though? I don't believe that they intentionally do it. I don't think that a lot of parents know that they're doing it. And I think that when it gets called out, they take offense to it because they're like, I love my kid. I would never X, Y, Z. But when you really look at it, that's exactly what you're doing. Now, it's not your intention, but I'm telling you that that's what you're doing.
Right.
So now you have to be susceptible to criticism, corrective criticism. And sometimes some parents say, that's my kid. I can do whatever I want to do. And it's like, I get that. That's your kid, but you don't own your kid.
No, they have a completely different mind and spirit than you.
You don't own your child.
Talking about seeds, I just thought of this. So you have seeds and then you have weeds, right? Mm-hmm. And so the seeds come from within, right? The real seeds, the ones that are truly connected to this person's spirit, and and gives them that drive to do whatever it is. Okay. Right. And then weeds are the things that come from the outside. Okay. That pretty much choke out the seeds. Okay. So if this kid had, an inner liking to, let's say, engineering, whatever, we'll call it engineering. He's finding out new ways to do the same old things around the house, all right, to make your life easier. But you force them, or let's say, we won't only say force because force sounds intentional. You influence them to become something else. Let's say a plumber. Okay, whatever. Your daddy was a plumber. He made a lot of money. You should do it too.
Right.
Okay. So now these are two different realities. Okay. So the seeds never got a chance to grow. And we talk a lot about identity. Now these weeds are growing up faster because you're always around. And there's another layer of it, like you're saying earlier. I don't want to disappoint my family, or I don't want to let them down, or whatever. Eventually, those weeds are going to outgrow the seeds. And now it's an identity crisis. And the kid doesn't even know there's an identity crisis. All he knows is, I'm not happy.
Yep.
And this is sadness. Sadness can lead to depression. And I think it was Jim Carrey that was saying depression is essentially your body. And I think you meant your spirit is saying, I don't want to be this person anymore. I just want to be myself. But he can't be himself because he's this other person. And now those two identities conflict.
Right.
But there's a stronger one. And the stronger one is the one you didn't want, because you lived your whole life doing this other thing. And now the seed you had, you feel like, there's no accessing them, and you feel like it's over. And so, I just think that's an incentive to think about whenever we're talking about breaking the cycle.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the point of like the whole parent-child thing, because another thing that I see a lot is businesses. Like, oh, my family has a business and I have to take over. But what if that's not your dream? What if that's not your desire? But you feel like you got to do it because your daddy did it and your daddy's daddy did it and your daddy's daddy did it. But that's not your path.
It's not your path, yeah.
But it's pushed onto you because they're looking at it from a generational standpoint. Well, my daddy did it, and his daddy did it, and his daddy's daddy did it. And it's like, okay, and that's cool. The cycle stops here, though. And see, that's how I am. Like, my parents, I appreciate my parents because they are very vocal people, but so am I. And now, I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't always allowed to be vocal, but there was a point in my life where I didn't care about the consequences of me being vocal because I understood that I was still my own person. Even as a child, as a teenager, I was very mouthy and in a respectful way, but I was. And it's like people would call it talking back, but for me, it was having a conversation with my parents because a conversation is two people talking. Right. Not you talking at me. And so a lot of parents, you talk at your kids and then you wonder why when they turn 18 or older, they don't talk to you.
Right.
They don't know how to have a conversation with you because you never did that. You never allowed them to speak. It was always, you got to do it like this. It got to be like ... It was never you allowing them to provide their opinion or their observation on how things are. And it's like, I get it. You're the parent, they're the child. I get that. The whole stay in the child's place. I get that. But what I'm saying is, in order to have a conversation, it has to be a two-way street. Yeah. A lot of y'all don't know your children. And so when they go out and they do things that don't seem like them to you, you're confused. And that's because you don't know your kid. And that's not your child's fault. And I'm not even going to say it's your fault because you probably were not allowed to be your own person growing up. And this is why I keep saying cycles. Who's going to break it? I knew very early in life that I was going to break a lot of cycles, which meant I was going to stand firm on the things that I wanted. At some point, I decided I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I decided that I was going to tell my parents, I'm not doing that. But I decided that when I was grown. I wasn't saying that when I was a teenager. But when I was grown, I'm like, yeah, that's not what I want to do anymore. I don't want to do that. I actually like to do this instead. And I'm actually better at this. And you need to see this from my perspective. I've been hearing your perspective my whole life. Now it's your time to listen to my perspective and understand me as your child as a reflection of you. It's not that I'm trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to have a conversation.
Right.
Because I want you to understand me. And the only way you can understand me is to hear me.
Yep.
And not think you already know me. And I think that's where a lot of lines get blurred for parents because they think they already know their kid. And then they find out later they don't really know their kid.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we feel like we got to hide parts of us from our family because we don't want to deal with the backlash. We don't want to deal with them guilt tripping us. Oh, well, you just going to turn your back on your family. No, I'm just choosing me.
Right.
I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing my desires.
Yeah.
Because y'all teach us that, you come in this world alone, you die alone. Okay, well then I should be making the decisions for myself as a grown-up. I should be doing what makes me happy as a grown-up.
Right.
It's your job to rear me. It's your job to expose me to the possibilities. But it's still my job to choose what's best for me.
Agree. And I mean, I've always been told that I was a smart kid. Oh, you're so smart. You're a smart kid. Great. And when it comes to having these conversations with parents or, grown-ups or anything like that, adults, you as an adult, you should have that mindset of, like you're saying, get to know this person. Let the kid speak to you because they're not assessing themselves as they're telling you things. It's your job to assess. Where are they coming from? They're telling me this thing. Okay, let me absorb this information. And it's my job as an adult to, if they even ask for my opinion or feedback, to give them the wisdom. Okay. Right. Kids are smart, but they're not wise.
Exactly.
Okay. So when you're talking to a kid or speaking with a kid, listen. I mean, I have to say that because I feel like no one ever listened to me as a kid.
I know I wasn't listened to as a kid, and that's why I talk so much as an adult. I'm just going to be real. That's why I'm a very loquacious person as an adult, because as a child, I had to be quiet and listen to what they had to say. So now as an adult, you can ask my parents. They will attest to this. I will call them or they'll call me, and I will do the talking because I wasn't heard as a kid. You didn't get to hear me as a kid. Therefore, you don't know me. So now you're being granted the pleasure to get to know me, the real me.
Right.
And whatever that means. And it's not that it's not that I'm trying to be disrespectful. It's I want you to know the true me. Like earlier we talked about all of these hats that we wear with our family and our friends and at work. I wear a bunch of hats, but I would love for my parents to get to know all my hats.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with them knowing who I truly am. There was a period where I wasn't. And so I wasn't talking to them. They can tell you I wasn't talking to them. They would call me and I would be very short on the phone because I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable as a kid talking to them. So when I got to college, I didn't feel comfortable. Y'all are still my parents. Y'all are still going to judge me. Y'all are still going to tell me I'm not making the right decision. But I had to learn to give them an opportunity because just like I had to learn and grow and experience life, so did they.
Yeah.
My parents don't stop growing because I'm grown. Your parents don't stop growing because you're grown. We are ever evolving people. So that means the person you knew your mother or your father to be when you was a child is not who they are right now.
Yeah.
They are constantly evolving. So you should be having a conversation where you guys are getting to know each other. I am getting to know my parents where they are right now. I can talk about all the stuff that happened when I was a kid and all of that, but who are you right now?
Yeah.
Who are we going to be moving forward? How can we keep the lines of communication open to where it's comfortable for the both of us moving forward? Because when I have kids, I want those open lines of communication. I don't want my kid to ever feel like I felt in some moments where I just was like, I'm not telling my parents.
Right.
I don't want that because there was some things I should have been telling my parents, but I didn't feel like I could. And I just don't want that for my future children. So again, we're mending relationships. I'm mending relationships with family members so that going forward, I ain't gonna say a smooth ride, but it's smoother than it would have been, you know? And I think that goes to getting to know your children for who they are instead of just putting them out and focusing on you. It's like, I get that. You want that old thing back. You want to snap back like you used to look. You want to be in the streets like you used to be. And you want to do like this. You 18, you figure it out. This is my favorite line. I had to. Okay, but you don't want better for me?
Right.
Because I promise you I want better for mine. So when I have kids, they ain't going to have to figure out the things I have to figure out because I'm going to equip them with what they need. That's the difference.
That's the word right there, equipped.
And it's like I understand that people don't have resources, right? 20 years ago, we didn't have the resources we got now, all these podcasts and all of these YouTube videos and all of this stuff that's at our fingertips where we can get the information like that. You had to go to the library and research. You had to actually do some work to get answers. And now it's
like Google search.
I can pick this phone up and I can just Google, tell me how to. YouTube, tell me how to. That wasn't a thing 20 years ago. That wasn't a thing 30 years ago. And so you might not have been equipped with a lot of tools, but that's the beauty in growing.
Yeah.
That's the beauty in learning. You get to experience, learning sometimes with your parents, because me and my parents, we learn things together. Like I'll learn something, I'll call them like, hey, here's what I just learned. They're like, man, I never knew that. And it's like, it feels good to be able to help them like they help me. I mean, they help me to the best of their abilities.
Yeah.
And that's why I say we shouldn't fault. I wouldn't necessarily say faulting people for, oh, well, my mama kicked me out at 18. Okay, well, let's get to the root of why she felt like she needed to do that.
Right.
Let's get to the root as to what her childhood looked like. Let's get to the root of what her mother's childhood looked like, or her aunt, whoever raised her. We don't know. We assume that, our parents don't care, or my mama don't care about me, or my daddy don't care about me, based on our idea of what it should be. Right. Not thinking about the fact that they have their own ideas based on their own experiences. And that's why it's important to have conversations.
And that's just one way to break the cycle. I mean, I know, so having conversations and really separating yourself from your child in that way.
Right.
As far as interests are concerned. I'm sure your kids have similar behaviors to you, but that doesn't mean that they're you.
Yeah. That's a good one right there.
Yeah.
That's a real good one.
That's funny. I was thinking about this little baby. It was a baby girl, and they were teasing her. She's probably like 2 or 3 years old. They were teasing her, and she made this face, and everybody in the room was like, how she make that face? Like, your great-great-grandma used to make that same face. But they're not the same person. We'll just clear that up. But what are some other ways to break the cycle that we've talked about? We talked about, investing in your kid.
Yeah.
Taking your kid on some trips, maybe take him to, where is NASA? Houston. Take him to NASA. Look around. It don't have to be astronaut.
Right.
Okay. It could be anything else. There are some kids that grow up and they just, it's a joke, but they just want to make the world sparkle. Okay. Right. So maybe they invent cleaning products. It could be anything, as far as investing in your kid.
No, seriously. And I think another thing, when it comes to investments, I think that a lot of people don't know what to invest, you know? So like you just said, take your kid to, NASA in Houston. It's like, well, some people didn't even know that was a possibility. I think, again, that goes back to exposure. A lot of the times you're not exposed to things because your parents don't even know that you can be. They don't even know about it. Yeah. So I think that exposure is good in the sense of exposing your kids, but you can even expose yourself because you may not have been exposed to these possibilities, and because of it, you made the decisions you made. But now that you're exposed to these possibilities, it's not too late for you to make a different decision. You might be 45 and find out that you love telescopes, and now all of a sudden you get into telescopes and you get into astronomy and astrology, and now you're applying for jobs at NASA with your kid. You never, because you just said it. Your kids might be interested in some of the same things that you were, but you were never exposed to what they were. And so now, back to it, living through your kid. Well, I didn't have the opportunity to be exposed to telescopes, but I knew I like stuff like that. So I'm going to expose you to it and make sure you like it. So now I can ride the journey with you. But you don't have to ride the journey. You can be a part of it.
Absolutely.
And I think that and that goes back to identity, a lot of people don't know that they still have the option to make a decision.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like, well, I'm too old. No, you're not. Are you alive? Are you breathing? Are you in good health? Then you're not too old.
It ain't over yet.
It ain't over until it's over, okay?
Yeah.
And I'll say that again, it's not over until it's over, because I was in class in college with 80-year-olds.
Wow.
I was in class. One of my lab partners was in her 60s when I was in college. Just saying. So the whole, I'm too old, they don't sit well with me, because I know that's not a thing. It's a decision. You choose to, want better, do better, and so you do.
Yeah.
I always wanted better for myself, and so I make better decisions. And I think back to the identity piece, a lot of parents don't really know who they are.
Yeah.
And so the moment you get kicked out the house, they trying to figure out who they are. That's why you see things like, oh, she got her groove back. Oh, she thinks she young again. Well, that's because her life was on hold for 18 years. She was 20. Now she 38. Yeah. She feel like she back in her groove. She feel like, now I don't have to take care of a kid. Now I can do me. But we need to learn how to be able to do both. You still should maintain your identity as a person and still be a mom. You should be able to maintain your identity as a person and still be a dad. But I think that those lines get so blurred because your child becomes your life.
Right.
And I get that. I get it. And it's easier said than done.
Absolutely.
Maintaining your own identity, because you could even lose your identity in a relationship. Forget a kid. You can do that in a relationship.
Yep. Friendships, jobs, all that.
Yep. You have to want to maintain your identity, but you also have to want better for yourself. You want better for your kids, but you don't want better for you.
And speaking of working better, that's another way to break the cycle. Preparation. If you want your kid to contribute or be smart financially, start early.
Yeah.
I remember we used to have a saying, and I don't know if it's still around. As soon as I used to get a little bit of money, I'd be ready to spend it. They call it
pockets itching.
Yeah, they burning your pocket. Little dollars burning your pocket. But nobody planted those seeds. Nobody planted those responsible financial seeds.
Yeah, we come from a culture where we're calculating our dollars and cents before we even get it. And by the time you get it, it's already half spent or all spent.
Yeah.
But that comes from the lack of knowledge when it comes to finances. And I've learned that, over the years of learning about finances and learning the importance of certain things.
Yeah.
But again, you don't know until you know. So that's why I keep saying that I'm not going to say that anyone is at fault because we're all a part of a system. A lot of us lack this knowledge and these resources because the system allowed for us to be exiled. And so you got all of these other cultures and they're tapping into things. And we like, why we ain't been in these industries? Why we ain't? Well, that's because the doors were not open for you to be in that industry.
Right.
The doors are not open for you to be exposed to that. They didn't want you to know that.
Right.
But now we're in 2023 and the possibilities are endless. So now if you want to be exposed to certain things, you can be, but you don't even know what you can be exposed to until you're exposed to it.
Right. You got to go to different places. You'll never know what's outside until you go outside.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, we talked about a little bit about algorithms earlier.
Yeah.
Algorithms are probably the best and worst thing to happen to our world because they help you whenever you're looking for something. But what if you're looking for something else? Or what if you're thinking of something else? It's just going to continue to show you only thing that you've been looking for. You'll never make it out. What was that? I was looking at motorcycles. And now I was trying to focus on something completely different on how to get plants to make my house more oxygenated. And all I can see is motorcycles. Now I will spend another 20 minutes scrolling looking at motorcycles. But yeah, you have to get out there and look and dig and talk to people.
Right. Yes.
You pass by 20 people, they all have 20 different jobs.
Yep.
And 20 different interests. So
yep. Get to know people. I mean, networking is a huge deal, especially in 2023. Getting to know people, networking, putting yourself out there, exposing yourself to things, exposing yourself to the possibilities. You never know who you might run across. You never know who might see, you know, your whatever you got going on. You don't know. So you want to put yourself in a position to even be able to be exposed to ideas. It's like I can say all day, oh, I want to be, you know, top selling author, but if I'm not exposed to what it takes to be that, then I don't even know how to get there. If I'm not out here marketing and networking and doing all the things that it takes because I don't know that I have to do that, I'm never going to get there. And so that's one of the reasons why flight is a thing, because we're out here talking about the things that you talk about with your friends, you talk about in your home, but we're also providing solutions. Yeah. And I think that that's where a lot of things fall short because people want to just get on the microphone and just complain or just talk about it. But what solutions can you offer? What can you show me to help me get to what you're talking about?
Right.
So if this is for everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching. If you need directive, reach out to Flight. It's our job to help put you with the resources that you're looking for. That's why we do this.
Yeah, that's not only our job; it's our pleasure. I love to see,
Same.
And that's the thing. Like I love to see people doing what they love to do.
Right.
That's a completely, and this is a completely different topic. I want to talk about this one day. How people that actually do what they love to do aren't getting the recognition that they deserve.
Right.
Versus people that are just doing something but it's popular to do. Okay, great. If it like I don't know why this keeps coming to my mind right now. Clothing designers or shoe designers. I remember there's always one kid in my class, no matter where I went, they were always sketching some clothes or sketching some shoes. And I started thinking about it, like, I wonder how many fashion shows are going around, like locally.
Yeah.
Like if you were to make your own shirts and make your own clothes and you would go to a fashion show and speak to someone that worked there or someone who was directing there and say, hey, can I just sit back here? Can I just do this? Can you help me? Can you show me? And, you know, they might look at your game and be like, oh, okay, you know, that's a nice little outfit you got on. Oh, I made this. Really? Okay. Boom. That's all it took.
Yep. You got to be in the right spaces. And I honestly think that one of the issues is we don't know what those spaces are. And I can speak for myself. Mm-hmm. Like, I write books. I only know about 2 other personal authors who write books. And so I'm still trying to get exposure in that sense. Mm. Whereas if I was like an athlete, you know, there's plenty of things I can do. Like, I feel like there's certain, what's the word I'm looking for? Certain career fields, certain opportunities that are just way more exposed than others. Like, you know, like the entertainment industry. Like, this is one of my desires, being on radio, being on TV. I've always wanted to be behind a microphone talking.
Right.
This is me living my dreams, but I want to live it on a grander scale. So I'm like, man, how can I make this bigger? How can I? Well, it's like, okay, well, network. You need to start going to podcasting events and radio events, and you need to start exposing people to what you do,
right?
Because you don't know the possibilities if you're not in the place where the possibilities are.
Right.
And that's kind of where I am now. I'm in a moment where I'm like, okay, I need to be around all the authors I can find. I need to be around all the podcasters and radio hosts that I can find. I need to show them what I got.
Right.
Because you never know who might be like, you know what? We need her on TV. We need her on the radio. We need her to write a book. We need her to do a speech. If you're not exposing your talents, then people don't know, you know?
Yeah. And hungry people should definitely link up with other hungry people.
Absolutely.
Like, you're talking about writing books, man. Are there any distributors or out here who is just getting started? Like,
that's the kind of stuff I be looking for. I just need
somebody with a fire book that's gonna launch off my, my distribution company. I want to stop my label on this as a joint partner or something like that. And both of you explode at the same time. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But see, okay, so I'm glad you said that. My little cousin created my book cover design. He went to school for like design, right? And so when I found out that that's what he does, I'm like, I'm gonna let him, make my book cover and I'll pay him because I could pay anybody. And then now, if I'm not mistaken, he's either got his master's in it or he's getting his master's in it. And so the way I'm looking at it is like, we're both up and coming. At some point, we're both going to pop. And we can look back and be like, man, I'm glad I was given an opportunity. Right. I'm glad I gave this person an opportunity. I'm glad they gave me an opportunity. And now look at us.
Right.
So you can really be on the climb, like you said, together.
Yeah. That'll be awesome. I mean, well, shoot, we're nearing the end. But I mean, this is probably not the end of this conversation. I'm sure it'll come back around because we live this. This is an everyday reality for our people. And breaking that cycle is not something that'll probably happen at this very moment. But as long as, there are people talking about it and people that are willing to take an interest in, having a better future for our people, there's some momentum. Even if it's a little, slow motion is better than no motion. I'm cool with that. I look forward to really seeing this turn for the better.
Great. Same. I mean, I feel like what we do might not seem like a lot to people right now, but I know for a fact that this will pop off the way it needs to. It will get to the people it needs to get to, and we'll be able to do this on a wider scale, and you never know who you're going to reach.
Right.
My goal is to inspire as many people as I can. That's why I came here. That's why God sent me here. I know who I am. I know why I came, and so it would be a disservice to not only myself, but to everybody connected to my purpose. Because I truly believe that people are connected to your purpose. My purpose is to inspire. So if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, then I could literally be hindering other people from doing what they were supposed to do.
Agreed.
And so that's why I go so hard. That's why I advocate so hard for just following your dreams and just really getting out there and doing whatever it takes to be successful, because you never know who you can inspire.
Absolutely.
And I say it all the time. Jordan Peele is one of the reasons why I went ahead and put out my Focus the Wake Up book.
Yeah.
Because he was very, very unapologetic about his messages. You know what I mean? And that was one of the things I was afraid of. I was afraid of the backlash. And it's like, well, no, the message is the message.
Right.
Put it out there. You never know who you will inspire to do all kinds of things.
I 100% agree. Well, shoot, this has been the Flight Podcast. Please take a look at the description. I'm sure a link for Focus to Wake Up will be in there.
Absolutely.
Link to the Spotify and everywhere else you can find us. Please interact with us.
Please.
Comment. We're gonna have some live broadcasts coming up. I think it's gonna be Facebook Live. I think we'd probably do Facebook Live.
I'm with that.
Maybe. We'll see. But yeah, this is Dash in Dallas.
And I'm Missy Meaty.
All right. And until next time, you guys, we love you. And we'll see you next time.
Don't forget to take flight. Like, subscribe, and share. Be out.